Welcome to the DEFCAM. After ceasefire in Operation Sindoor, India recalibrated its military and diplomatic posture. It shifted from overt kinetic actions to a hybrid campaign, using water, diplomacy, and economic leverage to pressure Pakistan. A key move was India's outreach to Afghanistan, proposing to co-develop a dam on the Kabul River. Although framed as development aid, the strategic aim was clear: upstream control of water that flows into Pakistan, especially into its agrarian heartlands in Khyber Pukhtoon-khaa and Punjab. Indian engineers were quietly sent to eastern Afghanistan to conduct feasibility surveys in Kunar and Lugman. Satellite data later confirmed activity consistent with dam modeling. India's hydrological capability, using synthetic aperture radar, cryospheric satellite data, and predictive algorithms, enabled precise planning. Strategic objectives included restricting winter flows and increasing sediment loads in summer, disrupting Pakistan's irrigation systems, and reducing agricultural reliability, particularly near the Warsak and Dargai intake zones. Meanwhile, India advanced upstream hydro projects in Jammu and Kashmir, including the Sawakot and Uj complexes. Though legally compliant under the Indus Waters Treaty, their cumulative dead storage allowed real-time flow regulation. By using automated spillways and monsoon models, India could stage controlled releases, simulating floods in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. Nighttime discharges increased canal turbulence and erosion risks, damaging Pakistan's irrigation networks. This hydrological pressure was coupled with a diplomatic pivot in the Gulf. Through back-channel negotiations, India encouraged GCC states to reduce reliance on Pakistani labor. India offered trade incentives and maritime security guarantees in return for restricting Pakistani worker intakes and remittance flows. Policy memos advocated deportation of up to 1.5 million Pakistani workers under the guise of labor reforms, directly threatening Pakistan's foreign exchange stability. Pakistan interpreted these actions as part of a broader coercive strategy, enabled by India's rising intelligence and geopolitical clout after the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. The combined dam development in Afghanistan and Gulf alignment against Pakistani labor were seen as elements of a multi-domain encirclement. In response, Pakistan's Indus River System Authority enhanced monitoring by deploying AI-linked sensors to detect irregular upstream flows. Its satellites, PRSS-1 and PAC-TES-1A, were tasked with analyzing Afghan and Indian construction zones for indicators of dam building. The Strategic Plans Division of Pakistan approved a two-phase counter-hydrological initiative. The first phase accelerated construction of the Momand and Jamir Bahasha dams, using Chinese project software and the Karakoram Highway for logistics. The second involved a proposal to China for regulating flow from the Yarlung-Tsangpa, Upper Brahmaputra, potentially curbing water supply to India's northeast. Pakistani officials cited Indian actions in Kabul and Kashmir to justify preemptive Chinese dam projects. Technical talks began between Pakistan's WAPDA and China's Changjiang Institute, focusing on seasonal flow modeling and potential water diversions into tributary glaciers. Diplomatically, Pakistan launched a campaign across Gulf states, stressing its role in regional food security and labor supply. Envoys warned of the economic consequences of displacing Pakistani workers and the social unrest it might cause among diaspora communities. Pakistan also introduced offshore investment instruments in Gulf currencies to ease remittance pressures. India's upstream control ambitions, however, revealed strategic vulnerabilities. The Brahmaputra River, crucial to northeastern India, originates in Chinese-controlled Tibet. China's existing and proposed dams, like the Medog Dam, could potentially withhold flows during India's key agricultural periods. If India continued its hydrological pressure on Pakistan, China might respond with its own water regulation against India, using similar low-head reservoir techniques. On the economic front, India's pressure on GCC states underestimated labor dynamics. Pakistani workers, familiar with Gulf infrastructure needs and cultural contexts, were difficult to replace with Indian labor. Moreover, India's maritime security promises required Gulf investments in Indian naval capabilities, potentially provoking Iran and upsetting the maritime balance in the region. Pakistan also diversified its expatriate labor strategy. New agreements were signed with Malaysia, Turkey, and Central Asian nations to absorb Pakistani workers, particularly in textiles and agriculture. Joint training centers were created to align Pakistani workers with foreign technical standards. Domestically, Pakistan expanded its IT infrastructure, offering tax breaks to encourage software exports, aiming to replace volatile physical remittances with digital earnings. India's strategy post-Sindoor marked a shift toward deniable, indirect pressure through water manipulation, labor displacement, and diplomatic encirclement. Pakistan's countermeasures blended hydrological monitoring, satellite surveillance, diplomatic outreach, and strategic coordination with China. Ultimately, India's broader aim of coercing Pakistan without open conflict risked unintended escalation. China, with its infrastructure dominance over India's eastern watershed, holds the capacity to impose symmetrical water pressure on India, something India cannot easily counter in the West. South Asia's fragile equilibrium depends on restraint in critical domains like water, trade, and population movement. India's unilateral tactics risk not only retaliation from Pakistan, but also activation of latent Chinese pressure points. As both nations enter an era of ambient confrontation driven by climate-sensitive dependencies, the tools of escalation and defense will shift from weapons to water flows, data models, labor dynamics, and supply chains. Without mutual restraint, provocations in one domain may trigger disproportionate responses in others, destabilizing the region beyond military calculations. The future of conflict and deterrence in South Asia may rest less on armies and more on dam gates, satellite imagery, and the diplomacy of denial. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the upcoming videos.